Hi, you're listening to This Is Not Your Practice Life. I'm your host, Macy Renee, and we are going on a journey together, my friends. I'm a certified life and emotional intelligence coach. And if you really want to step into your highest self, there are a few non-negotiables you're going to have to learn, and I am just the person to help you do it. No matter your past, I'm here to help you create a more fulfilling future. So stick around with me. Not only will I teach you how to navigate your brain's daily mind drama, but I'll help you actually understand your mind, your emotions, why you do the things you do, and why others do the things they do. Most importantly, I'll help you build the self-awareness skills to create whatever results you want. It's never too late to change the trajectory of your life. After all, this is not your practice life. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome back to another episode of This Is Not Your Practice Life podcast. I am so excited to have you guys here today, whether you are a brand new listener or you're a returning listener, because today is very special. Today, you will get to hear an interview I did with one of my really good friends, Mindy Kyle. Now, I met Mindy back in 2021 when we were paired in the same cohort for our life coach school certification. And in addition to this certification, Mindy is also certified as a positive parenting coach and a certified blended family coach with over 15 years of experience specializing in the stepmom experience. So if you are a stepmom, this is going to be an episode that will serve you very well. In addition to Mindy just being a talented stepmom coach, she's also a wonderful friend, a wonderful human being. I think she's so fun, and I just enjoy the time that I get to spend with her, and I've enjoyed getting to know her over the last few years as a friend. So I can't wait for you all to get to know her as well and hear this interview, what her experience has been as a stepmom, how she can help you if you are in that position, and also all of the things that she's learned from coaching other women in the stepmom role. So I hope you enjoyed this episode getting to know Mindy. You can learn more about her in the show notes, as well as find her links to social media if you'd like to give her a follow. But she is fabulous, trust me, and I think you're really going to enjoy this. So enjoy this interview with Mindy Kyle. All right, welcome, Mindy, to This Is Not Your Practice Life podcast. I'm so excited to have you today. So I would love to actually just start off with you sharing a little bit about your journey, like how you came to be a stepmom, and a little bit about yourself too for my audience.
Yeah, I'd love to. And thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here and to talk to your audience. So my stepmom origin journey, it has been a crazy one and it started a long time ago. So I've been a stepmom for almost 16 years. We've been married 15. So I came into their life about 16 years ago when I was 24 years old. So I was young. I didn't have any children of my own, and I fell in love. It was not part of my 10-year plan, I will tell you that. I fell in love with a man who had 4 kids already, and it was quite a journey coming into a relationship where I really had no experience with kids. I wasn't even sure if I wanted kids. Maybe when I was like 30 or 35 is what I was thinking. And then becoming an instant stepmom to 4 kids, and then very soon after we had 2 kids of our own. And so it was kind of like baptism by fire. I really didn't have much experience with children. I didn't even know what the stepmom journey would look like. And that's kind of where it all started for me, is this idea that I knew I wanted to do it well. I knew I wanted to be a good stepmom, but I just didn't even know what that would look like. And very soon after becoming a stepmom, I realized just how complex this role was, how complex blended families are in general. There's a lot of stigma that you face in a blended family in general, but specifically with a stepmom role, there's a lot of stigma. I mean, like Disney did us pretty dirty as stepmoms, right? It's the evil stepmom trope that is very alive and well. And so I feel like you come in and you're trying to prove yourself right off the bat because you don't want people to assume the worst.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that, how Disney paints you all as the villain.
Yeah, pretty much in all of their movies. Yeah, there's an evil stepmom.
Oh, that is so true. Wow. So, being that you were 24 and obviously, like, did you dive into resources? Like, how did you just jump in with both feet and have to learn the hard way? Like, how would you say you felt, in maybe support or lack of support at 24 years old? Like, did you have resources you could go to or no?
There wasn't much 16 years ago, I'll be honest. And that was a part of the problem. And not many people were talking about it, not even in friend groups or in the circles that I was, of circles of women that I was coming in contact with. I did have some experience with blended families, but minimal at that point because my parents divorced when I was 18. And my dad remarried a year later. And so I had a stepmom, and I'm doing air quotes, but the relationship was not great, and she wasn't a super present figure in my life. And so I didn't really know what that, I mean, I was 18, and I was, working, and kind of not soon after, actually, I moved out of state away from them, so I didn't have a lot of contact with her. And so I didn't know what this role needed to look like or what it should look like. And that was a part of the problem. One of the main problems right off the bat is that I was taking nuclear family ideals, first family ideals, and using them as like a roadmap for this blended family because it's all I had. And that's what I think a lot of us do, is we just take our lived experience and we apply it to what we've got going on in our lives, whether that's, your stepmom role or your blended family in general. Or I mean, I guess all of us do that to some degree anyway. It's what we use to try and make sense of what we should be doing in our life. And that works for some situations, but in a blended family, the dynamics are so complex that applying first family ideals and tools doesn't always work well. And I was figuring that out pretty quickly and early on in my journey as a stepmom. And I really just came in wanting to hustle so hard for their affection and love. Like, I thought that if
Yeah.
I just hustled so hard, bent over backwards, did everything within my power to kind of people please and to accommodate and go above and beyond. Like, I was going to win an award for the stepmom role. That was my goal. Like, I will be the best stepmom that this world has ever seen,
Yeah.
thinking that, yeah, I can prove myself and then I can win their love. Only to find myself extremely burnt out at about 7 years, and on the verge of a nervous breakdown or a divorce, one or the other. So I
Yeah.
booked a retreat to Sedona, Arizona, and that's kind of where my journey started, because one of the things I realized in that 4-day retreat was that I had lost myself in this process of being desperate for affection and connection and wanting to know that I belonged in this family and that my stepkids approved of me and that my kids' mom approved of me, my stepkids' mom, I should say, and really lost myself in that process of just needing that from all these individuals and didn't really know who I was after 7 years. And it wasn't working out the way I thought it would. Like, there were highs and lows, just like any blended family. And it really left me feeling depleted, insecure, and at a loss. And so I had tried a couple of therapists and they really didn't understand blended families, though I am a huge proponent of therapy. They didn't understand my journey as a stepmom specifically. And so that's what set me on this journey to kind of gather resources and read books and understand this role for myself.
Wow. So, what are some of the most profound things you learned or realized in this journey of like, okay, I'm burnt out, I have given it my all, I feel depleted, I'm not getting necessarily the result that I want to be getting. What was that moment where you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize this or this? Do you have that moment?
Yeah. Well, I didn't realize that there is a lot more at play in these relationships than I initially even was aware of or had considered. And I think that's a big issue for a lot of any step parent, honestly, or any parent in that is trying to raise children in a blended family, the dynamics are more complex than we give a lot of credit to. And when I started to look at the research behind blended families and these relationships, I started to understand one, that biology plays a huge factor, a huge role in relationships. And I was not giving that enough credit or even acknowledging that that existed,
Mm-hmm.
because honestly in society we talk about blended families in a way that is in a lot of times pretty toxic. There's this expectation of immediate blending, immediate close connections, expecting these step parents to step in and walk a really honestly a very fine line between overstepping and not doing enough, not investing enough in relationships so that you actually cultivate trust and connection, but then maybe overdoing it in some areas to this is all opinion based obviously, but each person's opinion is different, and that's where it's tough because you want to invest, but then you also don't want to go too far. And biology plays a big role in that. So we have attachment and biology that obviously plays a huge part in the connection and relationships with children and their bio parents from an early age.
Yeah.
So as a step parent, depending on when you come into their lives, you either will have that or won't. You'll never have biology, but you may have an earlier attachment with these children, but it's probably not going to look like it did for their bio mom relationship with these kids, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so there's this expectation to create a relationship that reflects that type of relationship, and it's
Mm-hmm.
just not possible because you're not working with the same tools, you're not working with the same start that
Yeah.
these other relationships have.
Yeah, that's so true because you think about it like on a cellular level, a bio mom is connected to her child at a different level than someone coming in, you know. And I think that's probably what creates that tricky dynamic too for the bio parent, right? Where they're like a lot of those emotions come up when a step parent comes in because there's fear on their end as well. Like,
Yes.
what do you feel is the most misunderstood thing when it comes to being a step mom or step parent? What do you feel like people misunderstand the most?
I think the majority of women I work with, and I know this applies to me as well, that we are so well intentioned, that we really genuinely just want so badly to connect with these kids and to feel like they're family and for them to feel like we're family, because it is really hard to exist in a home where you don't feel connected to the individuals that live with you.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really hard for a lot of step parents because, and I will be the first to admit that step parents tend to go a little overboard in the beginning. The majority of my clients, and I did this as well, they are really just trying to prove their value, like trying to prove that they're a good stepmom, trying to prove that they love these kids, trying to, a lot of what my stepmoms will say, and I did this as well, is I'm just going to treat them like I would treat my own kids, because unfortunately that's what society has said is the right thing to do.
Mm.
But it can be perceived as overstepping or doing too much or trying to one up the bio mom. And I'd be the first to say too that I think there are some situations where that's happening. I
Mhm.
do, and I don't think everyone's perfect in any of these scenarios. But what the majority of these situations are showing is that stepmoms and stepparents in general, I think, are desperate for approval.
Mm.
And so that's where the energy is coming from, is like, I want to belong with these kids. I also want them to know they belong with me. And they push a little hard in the beginning to get there too quickly, right? Because this is a really long journey. It takes a long time to blend. Studies have shown that even in the best of circumstances, it takes 4 to 7 years to
Wow.
blend a family where kids actually start to feel comfortable and step parents start to feel comfortable. And in high conflict situations, it's much longer than that.
Oh my gosh, that's insane. I can totally
Mhm.
see it, but like that is crazy to really like let that marinate and sink in how long it actually takes.
It is a long-term commitment.
Wow. So now I'm curious about like the partner side of this. What do you find that stepmoms, or even like if you hear a little bit more about just, other blended family dynamics, what's the hardest part with the partner in that situation? Is it that the partner often feels like they have to pick a side? Is it that they don't know like how to navigate what their kids are feeling and now what their, wife is feeling? Or like what do you see there with like the partner kind of tension that happens?
Yeah. And so obviously I work from the perspective of like, I only coach stepmoms. So I am dealing with mostly heterosexual relationships. So it's, their partner's a man, which does tend to make things a little different because the way that they perceive these dynamics, sometimes in most situations, I will say that their partners are a little avoidant. So
Okay.
I see a lot of male partners that are avoidant don't really want to address issues. They'd
Okay.
rather kind of kind of bypass them if possible until they're really in their face. And I actually find that dynamic is the hardest for women to deal with because women are ruminating. They're thinking things through 1,000 different ways and angles and approaches. They've already thought about this probably for like 4 hours before they've brought it to their partner, right?
Oh,
And
no.
so to them it's a big deal and they really want it addressed. And I do find that their male partners don't fully understand how much this is impacting them, and they don't understand maybe the bind that the stepmom is in trying to live and exist in this environment in their home, without feeling connected to the people that are living there. And that's not quite, maybe, I mean, they love them, but there's probably not a really close connection yet. And yet they're caring for them and they're doing all of the things that a mother would do. And that's another issue is, so yes, the partner, the husband probably feels like he's caught in the middle a lot of the time. He probably feels like, yeah, I want to support my wife, but I also need to advocate for my kids. And I'm also playing middleman with my ex. Right. And so he's really juggling a lot of balls here because it's tough to try and appease everyone. It's impossible. Let's be real. It's impossible.
Yeah.
You can't please everyone. So it's a balancing act for him, um, which is tough. And I feel for them a lot in those situations because one, they are connected to everyone in the house, specifically the dads. He is biologically connected to his kids. He's connected to his wife and he's connected to his ex in one way or another. So
Hmm.
he really truly is the middleman. And I think that is a tough position to be in.
Yeah. What do you think would be like, obviously, we know that there's tools to help, like with stepmoms and things like that, but what do you think even stepmoms need as far as support to kind of navigate these complicated dynamics between the ex and the partner and the kids? Like, what do you suggest? What would have been helpful to you?
I think one, you need a support system that is there for just you, because your partner, though they can be the most amazing partner in the world and they can be empathetic, they cannot be totally neutral and they can't be totally on your side, because he does have to advocate for his children. He does have to hear their side. He does have to hold space for their experience as well. And so a lot of times I find that stepmoms feel like there's nobody really just there for them, who is there to advocate for them and to have their back and to listen fully without having to have loyalty somewhere else as well. Right.
Yeah.
I think we can't rely fully on our partners to provide that for us because it's just not possible in these situations. They have they have to be loyal elsewhere as well. It doesn't mean that we can't balance this out, doesn't mean that we can't have open and honest communication. Like, that's great, but there's really something to be said for having somebody who's just there to listen to your side and is there to advocate for you. So a therapist or a coach, I think, is imperative for a new stepmom, at least for a little while, so that she can really get her footing. Also, education is so important. I find that stepmoms that don't know anything about their blended family dynamics tend to internalize it a lot as their problem. Like, I'm broken. I must be doing something wrong here. Everybody else has got it figured out. They see like matching jerseys on social media and they see like going on Disney cruises with, the whole family. And they're like, what's wrong? What's broken with me and my family?
Mm.
So there's a lot of internalizing about their failings. And it's not failings. So once you get educated on the realities of blended families, and the science and the studies behind it, it helps to release a lot of that pressure, because those examples in social media are like top 1% of the population. This is not happening in most scenarios, and nor should it be the goal, because the reality is that does not work for most people. So we should not be putting that as our goal, as the end goal. If it's organic and it happens to work for those 1% of blended families, fantastic. I think you should do it if it works, but not making it the ideal and then trying to cram your family into this system that honestly feels awkward, feels uncomfortable, and is just not how you want to spend a Disney cruise.
Yeah, that's so true. That would be a level of torture, probably, right? With all the right tools and yeah. Which brings
Yeah.
me to, so like on my podcast, a lot of who I serve are women that come from all walks of life, backgrounds. Really, I feel like in a way it's very general with who I serve, but the focus and niche is on emotional intelligence, right? And understanding yourself and your emotions and how you react to things and your mindset. How important do you feel emotional intelligence is with the stepmoms that you're working with? And do you find that it's a skill you're often helping them along with, or do you find that they come equipped and ready? Tell me a little bit about that.
I find that what I say all the time is if you want a crash course on your triggers and where you are insecure and where you do not have emotional intelligence, become a stepmom, because you will find out so fast where you're lacking. And that's actually what I find to be the most interesting, because a lot of the clients I work with are in all other areas of their life. Society would say they are so skilled, so intelligent, so composed, so emotionally equipped. Like
Yeah.
their EQ is high. Like female fighter jet pilots, obviously. I worked with one who was at the top ranked female fighter jet pilot. She dominated in a male dominated industry.
Wow.
Obviously, she has a high EQ. Obviously, she is very good at controlling emotion and very good at navigating high stress situations.
Mm-hmm.
And she came to me saying that stepmom role triggered parts of her she'd never seen before, and she'd found herself insecure, feeling like inadequate, all of the things. So I think what's interesting about it is that we have to give ourselves a lot of grace, even in a blended family in general. It doesn't matter if you're stepmoms statistically struggle twice as much as anyone else in a blended family. So with suicidal thoughts, depression, anxiety, stepmoms are struggling the most statistically, but that doesn't diminish everyone else in the blended family role either. It is an incredibly triggering situation to be in for everyone. And so emotional intelligence is the only thing that's going to get you through these situations, because if you don't have it, you're probably going to react in a way that just adds fuel to the fire in these situations, because they are intense, they are heated, there's a lot of emotion, there's a lot of territorial nature, there's primal nature involved. Like if you're a bio mom, this is a primal need to keep your kids safe, to protect them, to emotionally care for them. And when you lose connection with your kids 50% of the time,
Mm-hmm.
it elicits, or even more sometimes, it elicits this need and reaction in us that I don't think we know what to do with sometimes.
Wow, yeah, that is so true.
Mm-hmm.
I've
Yeah.
seen some different dynamics play out, with my clients, whether they are a step parent or they're the bio parent. And I have to say, like, if you like, the impulse control has to be there, your stress tolerance has to be there, because there's just so many things that are happening within the household or outside of the household that can trigger a lot of heavy, heavy, heavy emotions. Um, yeah, and then the
Yeah. And a
brain.
lot of things that are out of your control,
Yeah.
which, like, so much of this dynamic is out of our control. It doesn't matter if it's stepmom's side, bio mom's side, dad's side, stepdad's side, doesn't matter. There is an element of feeling out of control, which triggers parts of us as humans it's very hard to navigate when you
Yeah.
feel that way.
Yeah. And I was just going to say, like, the brain creates stories when it doesn't know something. So then, so then sometimes there's not even truth sometimes to what our brain is creating in our own mind, and then adding to the fire of the complications of step parenting or,
100%.
the
Yeah, there's a
family.
lot of stories that get created and narratives around why people are acting a certain way or why she did XYZ or she must be trying to replace me or whatever it may be. And I understand the need for stories as humans. But in these situations, particularly, it's pretty toxic when we start to create a narrative about the other person, because then we hold pretty, hard. We have a hold of that narrative, and it's hard to ever have any evidence of anything different. Our brain won't even see it, right? So,
Yeah.
biomom might actually be trying to extend an olive branch, and we won't see it because our belief is that she's here to ruin our relationships with our stepkids. She's here to undermine us. She's here to make us look bad or alienate the kids from us. And some of that's true in certain situations. But what I find is most of the time, each side is just heavily triggered and protecting what they feel they need to protect. And the way each side perceives that is vindictive or manipulative, when really it's probably just self protection. And if we could rewrite that story in a little more compassionate way, it would leave room for a healthier, more amicable dynamic between everyone.
That is so true. That is so true. So good. Do you find, let's see, like what's the dynamic oftentimes with the kids and their step parent? Is it fear of having a relationship with the step parent because they're worried about what their mom and dad are going to think about it, right? Or is it, or are they really struggling with certain aspects, of the stepmom or, step parent that just, what do you find? Like, what do you hear from the stepmom journey as far as like the relationship with these stepkids?
I think there's it each situation is really unique, but I do find that in most situations kids are afraid to even like stepmom or a stepdad because they don't want to hurt the feelings of their bio parents, specifically the same gender bio parents. So
Okay.
in my situation, when I coach stepmoms, it's a lot of kids are really internalizing the need to take care of their bio mom. They don't want her to feel any certain ways. They don't want her to feel hurt or rejected or forgotten about or anything like that. And kids are hardwired to take care of a bio parent first always, because their attachment to that bio parent is biologically more important than anything else in their life. That's how they're hardwired. So they will lean towards caretaking a bio parent above all else. And so what that does is it creates a really tricky dynamic for a step parent, because they notice it, they notice the push away from them, they notice the shutting down and the protecting of mom, but it leaves the kids really caught in a really tricky situation because they have to live with stepmom. They have to exist with her. And
Hmm.
so it's awkward for them because a lot of them genuinely, not all, but genuinely, I feel like a lot of them do want to like stepmom. If
Hmm.
she's a good person and she's just showing up for them and she's loving on them and she's doing a good job of balancing that, what I call, like, she comes in as a parental figure or an adult figure, either one, depending on the age of the child. If they're above 9, the new stepmom's an adult figure in their life. If they're
Okay.
below 9, it's sometimes more of a parental figure because they need a lot more support
Mm.
than, a child that's 9 and above. But they want to like her. They really do. In most circumstances, they just don't know if they're allowed to. And even on mom's side, I will say that most moms are not verbalizing this out loud to their kids, but the
Yeah.
kids pick up on her stress. So maybe they get into the car after being at dad's with a dad and stepmom's house, and they're like, "Mom, guess what? We went to the aquarium and, stepmom took us with our best friends and we had ice cream or whatever." And she'll say, "That's so great." But they see her shoulders tense up. They see her immediately shift the conversation. They notice that her energy changed, and that is enough to send a message to the children that mom's not okay with this. So we're not going to do this anymore. We don't want to go with stepmom anymore because we need to prioritize mom's well being.
Ugh.
And that's not to blame mom. I know that it's hard because it's subtle cues that really send a message to children, and we can't all, be perfect. But this goes to show that it's not, moms don't have to be malicious. They don't have to be saying, oh, your stepmom's horrible. They don't have to say that in order for kids to internalize that mom's not okay with new mom or new stepmom.
Yeah. And it just reiterates because I talk to my clients all the time about this, like where you could be doing your best, like your parents did the best with what they had at the time. But it's such for us, growing up, we read those cues and those signs. And then that's a lot of times where the people pleasing begins, right? Like, oh, if I talk about this thing or if I behave just this way, it's too much. I can read the cues. And so I just kind of mute my stuff. And then it becomes a cycle, right? We're very like muted. And I think this is also what creates a really hard, like just relationship dynamics being challenging in general, because how many parties of a dynamic are muting and shoving down what they're feeling because they don't feel like they have the tools to talk about it. So, like you said, if you have a heterosexual couple, you've got dad that's like, oh, I don't really want to, I'm in such a hard dynamic. I don't want to press any buttons here, upset here. And so we're just going to push this down. But then you've got a stepmom that's like, I'm not being heard. I don't feel like I'm being supported. Then you've got bio mom who's in her own drama, about whatever,
Yeah.
she's feeling. And then you've got the kids that may feel a little offset where it's like, oh, we've got to be this way with this parent and this way with this parent, so it's so interesting to see just the, like when we lack the tools, how it can just spiral into something that I think a lot of times when we have the tools, it's a little bit more optional. You know what I mean? If we're able to practice our tools. So what do you feel like you want more people to understand about the blended family stepmom kind of dynamic? What would be helpful or supportive? Like if you have a friend that's a stepmom and they're talking about, the hard stuff, what would have been helpful or is helpful to that dynamic in life?
I think one, it's not the same as going in and starting a nuclear family from scratch. And I think we just assume it's just a family. It's just a family. It's just a family. Like we're just going to come together. It's just kids and it's just a normal dynamic. And yes, it's becoming more normal. We're sitting at close to 50% blended families in our society. So it's a very high number, but we really have to look at the history here. Blended families are incredibly new. Like new in that co-parenting is like a brand new concept. So blended families before the 70s, they formed, but it was out of death or a parent going missing, like going to the milk store and never coming back, right?
Ah,
Okay, so that's what happened. So we did essentially in that case the parent that has the children, the remaining parent would repartner, and yes, there'd be a step parent, but that step parent had no competition. They were the parent. And honestly, things weren't talked about back then either. Kids did not have the ability to share their feelings or to complain or to even address what's going on here. So they stuffed it and they dealt with it. And, we have generations that have been raised since then that have, obviously a product of that. But in the 80s or late 70s is when divorce, like no fault divorce, came in and people were divorcing more. And then custody became a thing, which
okay.
was new. And so, really, honestly, the 80s is when it started to take off. And it was the first time people had to share custody and co parent.
Wow.
So, we need to understand this is wildly new. We do not know enough about it. And education with blended families is paramount if we want to succeed at this. You have to invest in education, you have to invest in support. You need to understand emotional intelligence. You need to understand where are your shortcomings, where are your triggers, how do we address those, because the divorce rate for second families is insane. It's like sitting at almost 70% for
Wow.
second marriages, and if it's a third marriage it goes up from there.
Whoa.
And the more kids involved, the higher the likelihood of divorce. So we need education, and the studies to counter that say that if a couple engages in, doesn't matter if it's couples counseling or individual counseling specific to blended families, so that could be a blended family coach, an EQ, anything that is going to help you to understand triggers, dynamics,
Mm-hmm.
you decrease your chances of divorce by 30%, as much as 30%.
Whoa.
So you
That's
basically go back down to the national average if you
okay.
seek support prior to getting together.
Wow. That's insane. That's
Support
huge.
is huge. Yeah.
That is huge. That is so huge. Oh my gosh. Okay. I know you do a lot of podcast interviews. Is there anything that, like, when you walk away from a podcast interview, you wish that you were asked or that you wish you would have taken more time to talk about that doesn't always get, placed in? Do you find that there's anything lingering that you think about and you're like, oh, I wish we would have talked about this because I feel like it's so vital to whether it's a stepmom listening or someone else listening?
I think one of the things people overlook a lot because they're actually so hyper focused on the issues between co parents. Like, if you look at social media, all that's talked about in blended families, it's actually a horrible thing to like search on the search bar. Don't do it. But like if you look at stepmom, biomom stuff or blended families, I will tell you the first thing that comes up is either high conflict stepmom, high conflict biomom terms. There's a lot of focus on the dysfunction of the parents. And
Mm,
yes, that's a part of this, but it's not, in my opinion, it's not the biggest part. The biggest piece that we do not talk about enough, and it's something I'm really passionate about, is the health and well-being of the children, because these kids are being raised in this environment. This is their childhood. They get one childhood. And we all know how childhood can affect us as adults.
yeah.
It has a tremendous impact on how we grow up and the things we will have to work through continually in our adult years. And it's a lot of it's created by the adults in our lives, right? And
Yep.
so I'm really passionate about focusing on better ways to raise these children in a divorced family, because divorce, even in the best of situations, and I know people don't love to hear this, but there's research backing it, even in the best of circumstances, divorce is traumatic. You can do it better, right, than other ways. There are ways to do this better, but we have to acknowledge the fact that this is traumatic, and we need to work to counter those traumatic impacts on these children. They deserve to have like a healthy, happy childhood that's balanced. So we need to focus more on how do we support the kids in between homes, because these kids are uprooting. If in most circumstances we're looking at 50-50 between homes. So the kids literally live half their life one place, half their life another. There's a ton of uprooting and a ton of change. And they go from one home environment that maybe has one set of rules and one routine and one set of values and beliefs. And then they literally shift from that into a maybe sometimes a very completely different polar opposite home that has maybe less routines and different values and different structure. They have to oscillate between those things. Let's say 1 week on, 1 week off. That is a tremendous feat for even an adult,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
if you had to literally uproot your life every 7 days into a
Oh,
completely different job, like you literally go from one job that's corporate structured, you know exactly when to clock in, you have an exact routine, meetings at certain times, and then the next week you go to a job that is loosely organized,
mm,
doesn't have a routine, all of that. It would be super hard to be your best, right?
yeah. 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 Because
So
I was
that's
even
important.
thinking, like, if you uproot me from my house and put me in an Airbnb every 7 days, I'm gonna lose it. You know what I mean? I'm gonna lose it. Like, because that is really hard because you want to settle in and feel safe in your environment. You want to feel comfortable in your environment. And even in switching environments, you want that safety and comfort wherever you are. You know what I mean? And yes, you're right. The people that are in that dynamic with you are really impacting, especially when you're a child, how that feels. So,
Yes.
what's the solution there? Like, how do you start tackling that passion of yours?
I think there's a lot of complexity to this, because in a perfect scenario, I would say the adults need to communicate better. They need to communicate about the structure within their home, which I know is a tricky dynamic. I say that with all the compassion in the world, because sometimes you divorce for a reason. Obviously, you divorce for a reason, and you maybe aren't so compatible with your ex. And maybe the reason you divorced is because you don't want to live your life like your ex. And so you actually want a polar opposite. That's what you want. And I understand that. But I think we have to hold some compassion for how dysregulating that could be for the children. And so finding a happy medium would be ideal. If you can communicate with your ex, if you can get on the same page, let's keep the home environments as close to centered and similar as we can, because
Mm-hmm.
that helps to decrease the stress when they go from home to home.
Mm-hmm.
If that's not an option and you really can't communicate with your ex and maybe they're not on board, then we really need to kind of modify our home. A lot of times what I find is that, at least on my side, when I coach stepmoms, their partners and the stepmom tend to want to be more structured and rigid in like expectations and routines and bedtime schedules and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe the other house isn't as much wanting to have that kind of structure. And I know it goes both ways though. But I know that that's a desire, that you want all of this structure, and it is healthy statistically for kids to have that. But when it is so extreme from the other home, the most beneficial thing we can do is to backtrack a little to meet somewhere closer to the middle, because it's jarring for the kids to
Mm-hmm.
go from one extreme to the other. And so we want to kind of soften that transition, even though, yes, we know that structure is really healthy for kids, but the complexities of blended families are at play here. And we can't have the ideal situation sometimes when we're working with two homes. It's really about creating flexibility. Like, where can I be flexible? I can't have exactly what I want because we're not working from a nuclear family and we don't have all of the control. But what's actually the best decision for the kids involved here?
Yeah. Gosh.
Mm-hmm.
Oof. I give you props. So what is your dynamic now with your stepchildren? If you are, do you talk about that? Is that something I
Yeah.
can ask? Okay.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So I have four stepkids. They're all adults now. They are living life like we're in a totally different stage of step parenting at this point. It's like adult step parenting, like you create a whole different relationship with these kids. Some of my stepkids have their kids of their own. So I have grandbabies. So we have three granddaughters and one grandson. And so we're in this phase of, and this is one of the things I say a lot, is that the stepmom journey does not end at 18. A lot of women are like, oh, I just can't wait till they're 18 and we don't have to do this anymore. And I will tell you that when my stepkids turned 18, I actually ended up doing way more group events than I had ever done. We had more intimate events with their mom, uh, just things I did not see coming. Like, when there's grandbabies born, you're only going to have one baby shower.
Yeah.
We never did group events prior to the kids turning 18. We pretty much did everything separate except for sporting events. But when the kids turned 18, there were a lot of life events and continue to be a lot of life events where we are in intimate settings together, and they tend to just keep coming. So you've got to develop the tools now, because you're going to be at your grandbaby's first birthday, or you're going to be at a wedding and a lineup and taking photos. And it's not fair to the kids if the adults don't get their crap together, like get
Oh,
it together. So yes, I think it's my dynamic is now that we have adult stepkids and we get to go on vacation with them and we get to watch their kids, and then we have two kids together that are 15 and 14. So we're in the teenage years getting ready to get them through high school and into college. Um, but we've kind of seen all the phases. And now that I'm here 16 years later, there's no finish line.
yeah.
There's no finish line. This is a lifelong commitment. You got to figure it out at some point. So it might as well be now. Don't wait 16 years and then be like, oh, shoot. I should have figured this out. I should have gotten the tools 16 years ago because man, this is not ending. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's so true. You think about that with like the weddings and you know what I mean? And truly this is where that self-awareness and emotional intelligence is so important because if you've not cleaned up what you've got going on inside, your energy, your tone, like it can all be read and can be felt. And it really isn't fair even to the adult grown children to have these imprints and memories in their mind of I have these, I'm an adult, but I have these adult parents that are not adulting very well and have now created kind of like a, subcategory memory of like, yeah, that wasn't so good. That wasn't so fun, which is so
Yeah.
disappointing.
Yeah, and it's hard for them to navigate because they just want to have a wedding or they just want to have a
Ah,
bridal shower and they're thinking about, oh my gosh, what's the dynamic between mom and my stepmom? Like that's not fair. That's not fair to them. They should be able to have their day. And so, you can't control the other party. Obviously, you can
yep.
only control what you do, but you showing up and cleaning up your stuff and working on making sure that you can be there as a support system and not bring your baggage to the party.
Yes.
That is such a gift. Like, work the baggage out, drop it before the event, right? And then come empty handed to the event. Like, do
Yeah.
not bring your baggage to the event. They don't need it. Okay.
That's so true. That's so true. Okay, so last question I have for you is what are you most proud of as a stepmom in navigating this journey for the last, 16 years? What's that what you said? 16.
Yeah, 16. Oh, that's such a good question. Nobody has asked me that. Gosh, Macy. Okay. I'm like, wow. Hold on. Let me think about this. What am I most proud of? I think I'm most proud of two things, I'll say. I am really exceptionally proud of myself for not losing myself in this journey because
Hmm.
it was close.
Hmm.
Um, I'm really proud that I was able to find my path through it and come out the other side, even though at the time when I was in the thick of it, I felt like there was no way out. I just did not see a path that would get me to the place I really thought I needed to be, like connection and feeling like I belonged in this family and feeling connected to my stepkids and connected to my husband and that we were a family unit. I just didn't see how that would be possible. So I'm really proud of all the work that I put in to get to where I am today. And I can genuinely say that when we're all together as a family, it feels like family. And that is no small feat in a blended family. So I'm really proud of that. And I am really, truly proud of the way I've shown up as a stepmom. It is, I have worked so hard to be neutral, to support them. Neutral meaning I don't take sides. I'm not bashing. I'm not talking negatively. It didn't matter. I've never had a conversation with any of my stepkids about the things that their mom and I have struggled with, even as adults. I've just never brought it to them. It's not their problem to solve. It's not their weight to carry. So I've always been really proud of how I've showed up for them, how I've supported them and loved them no matter what is going on behind the scenes.
Oh,
So
that's
yeah.
so good. And I hope you're so proud of like the business that you've built as well because you are
That too.
incredible.
Thank you. That too. I'll add that in there as a third one. Yes.
Yes, I feel like I always giggle whenever. So Mindy and I met through our coaching certification. What was it, 2021 when we did that?
That's what I was thinking. I think it is 2021. Yeah.
And one of my favorite things ever is that your story of how you even got there was you found it the night before on Google search.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. It makes me laugh every time somebody brings this up because what in the world?
it's like, did
Yeah.
you know what you were getting yourself into?
No, girl, no. Yeah, literally what you're saying is that we had to get on that first Zoom call and we had to say why we were here and what was it like that what we were
What like
going to
it's
do with this?
Yes, like why are you signing up to get certified in coaching? How long have you been coaching? Like all these questions. And Mindy, it's like, I just found this yesterday and signed up.
That is 100% the truth. That is a real story and it was it was one of those weird serendipitous moments that I'm so grateful for now looking back, but it was such a leap of faith at the time. I remember it was after I kind of had been on this healing journey and I had gone to Sedona and I was really finding myself and I'd done all this research about like blended families and I was feeling called to doing something to support stepmoms, but I didn't have a vision for it. I didn't even know what that would look like. I really had no clue. And randomly, Brooke Castillo came on my Facebook page and I happened to watch her. It was like a live coaching segment she had done. And I remember thinking, like, who's this person? I wonder what this is about. And I clicked on her thing and it was an ad for the certification. Literally, I think that was Thursday night and Friday was the deadline for it. And I remember thinking, do I do this? This is insane. I know nothing about this program, but I'm feeling really called to it. And I just remember sitting in my bed and I clicked bye. And the next Monday, I was on a Zoom call with you guys, and I really knew nothing about what I was doing here or why I was here.
That's so great. And it's so cool to see like how you have like just grown and transformed and who you help and like you've settled into your niche so well. And yes, you all have to go follow Mindy. So we will make sure that her links are in the show notes. I know you're on TikTok, you're on Instagram. Are you anywhere else that I don't know about?
Mainly TikTok and Instagram are the big ones. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right. Any last things you want to say?
No, this was so much fun. Thank you for having me on. And I
Yes.
adore you and I love what you do. So this has been such an honor.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. I know that my audience is going to love it. All right. We'll get you connected with Mindy. And Mindy, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Hey there. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of This Is Not Your Practice Life podcast. If you'd like to connect on social media, you can find me on both Instagram and Facebook at Macy Renee Coaching. And if you want to stay up to date on all of my offers, announcements, and inspirational emails, you can join my email list at macyrenee.com. In addition, if there's a way that I can further support you in your coaching journey, you can schedule a free 60-minute consult at macyrenee.com anytime you want so we can discuss the best options for you. I look forward to seeing you next week, and I hope you have an amazing day. Bye.